There are two new items on the Creation Club this morning, the Settlement Ambush Kit and the Fantasy Heroes set. We'll go over both. Let's start with the Settlement Ambush Kit. It's currently going for 900 credits? What? Holy cow! That's equivalent to $9. Goodness. Tired of being taken unawares by the Commonwealth's deadliest foes? Now you can turn the tables with the Settlement Ambush Kit. By setting up specific radio beacons or bait at your settlements, you can lure enemies in and have your automated defenses cut them to ribbons. And best of all, you can watch the action unfold remotely, utilizing a brand new security camera system. The creation appears while in workshop mode. Sounds promising, but is it worth 900 credits? Let's find out. After purchasing the Settlement Ambush Kit, we don't get any notification. Instead, we need to simply head to the settlement of our choice and open up the workshop to get started. I'm going to experiment with this at my Somerville Place settlement. I recently completed a settlement build video about this settlement, and it's perfect because it's got plenty of defense and a wall all around the settlement. We find the Settlement Ambush Kit in the Creation Club section of our settlement build menu. Here we find a unique category called the Settlement Ambush Kit. Within the Ambush Kit, we find a few new build menus. The first is called Raid, and within the Raid build menu, we have two options. The first is the Fake Distress Signal Beacon. It requires 1 power and it does have to be wired. Once wired, we simply flip a switch. We get a message. Fake Distress Signal active. Get ready. Presumably, we're sending out a distress signal that evil factions like raiders and gunners are going to be picking up on to try and take advantage of weak and wounded prey. Once active, we start the quest, The Endless War, and we learn that gunners are going to be assaulting the settlement. That's fine, I bet they'll be walking through the front door at any minute.
Something's out there.
Wait, what? We hear action behind us, and racing forward, we see that the gunners spawned right in the middle of the settlement. This isn't a problem with the creation, this is a problem with the Fallout 4 settlement system. Each settlement in the game has a handful of attack spawn point markers. Most of these are outside the bounds of the settlement, but for some settlements, like Somerville Place here, we'll find 1 or 2 markers inside the bounds of the settlement, which effectively make walls pointless. This is something that has frustrated me for quite some time. I've complained about it in a lot of my settlement build videos. So we can't fault the creation for this, it's a problem with the game itself, but it's clear that the Ambush Kit takes advantage of the spawn markers that already exist in the game. This, as the quest said, is an endless attack. It continues over and over and over again with the same enemies spawning. But I think it chooses a different spawn point each time. Here at the beginning, it chose the exact same spawn point for the first 3 waves, but for the 4th wave, it finally chose a spawn point outside the bounds of the settlement. There are 10 waves to each round. The enemies get tougher and tougher with each wave and progressively get better equipment. Eventually, we'll start seeing raiders in power armor. I even saw raiders wielding Gauss rifles. And on the 10th round, we fight a named mini-boss. At the end of the 10th round, we unlock a flag that we can plant in our settlement. We get a unique flag for each type of enemy that arrived. In this example, I'm showing you the flag I earned after surviving 10 waves of raider attacks. You can see the 10 tick marks on the flag. When the first round is over, the second round immediately begins. And again, we have 10 waves, but these are even more tough than the first round. Defeating the 10th wave unlocks another flag, and here you can see that it now has 20 tick marks on it. The only way to end the constant waves of battle is to either flip the switch on the beacon, thereby turning it off, or if our settlement morale gets too low. I don't fully understand the morale system yet, because I sat through 20 or so waves of this, and my morale never got too low. But from what I've read, our settlement morale can get too low if we don't repair our defenses as they come offline. We get a brief rest after each wave, and during that time we can quickly run around and try to repair our settlement defenses. The next item in the raid category is the fresh meat lure. This consists of a dead Brahmin with a big air conditioning fan positioned on a table right next to him, which I think is a clever design. This also has to be powered. After wiring it to a source of power, we flip a switch on the side of the fan to start the lure. And ew, you can see this green mist being blown out. We get a message, "Lure is baited, get ready." And presumably we will attract some creatures that are attracted to rotting meat. We get a message that super mutants will soon be attacking Somerville Place. I ran up the hill expecting them to spawn at this spawn point, but no, I was mistaken. This time they spawned outside the wall. Like with the last one, to stop the raid, we have to go back to the lure and flip the switch. All that's left is to run around and loot the bodies. If playing on survival or a very hard mode that increases the chance of finding a legendary weapon, this is an excellent way to farm legendaries. After all, the raids never stop, and if you have enough defenses, you can just stand back and let the defenses take care of everything and loot the corpses afterwards. I was really stoked to find a plasma-infused railway rifle. That's it for the raid menu. Backing out, the next menu over is the settlement ambush defense menu. Here, the first item is a security camera. And it looks great. The model they created here is doggone beautiful. Looks like it does have to be wired. I'm going to go ahead and put this on the outside of my guard tower facing the road, right next to my spotlight. Should make it easy to wire it up. Now, once the camera is wired, it's not going to do us any good until we build the next item to the right in the same menu, which is called the security camera monitors. This doesn't have to be wired. As long as we place it on a wall next to a source of ambient electricity, it's gonna work. It appears like a bank of 6 monitors, and we see a bit of a lore issue here. The images on the monitors are the same images that we find on the Watcher's monitors inside the SRB of the Institute. The reason this is a bit of a problem is because these specific images are related to a story. Each of these images depicts a point of interest where the Institute was spying on the sole survivor. Right outside Vault 111, inside Diamond City, at Fort Hagen, when the sole survivor was about to confront Kellogg. These are the images that the Institute's synthetic birds send back to the Institute. I covered this in greater detail in my video on the Watchers that you can watch here. Now, I understand why they included these images on the monitors. It was already made, it was easy, but it's a little disappointing to see them here because they have a purpose elsewhere, and they don't belong here. But setting aside my lore nitpickiness for now, to see what our camera sees, we select View Monitors. This brings up a list of every settlement where we have one of the cameras stationed. We select the settlement and then click View Camera. The screen blacks out with some static. We then have to wait for the game to load. And it's a pretty long load. It felt a lot like zoning from an interior cell into downtown Boston. But eventually, we see some static and we begin to see exactly what the camera sees. Note that I did just get a message saying that Hangman Alley was under attack. That's going to be important later. And it appears to be a real-time view of exactly what's going on at Somerville Place. However, notice that it's night. But we are at Somerville Place. That's where this monitor bank is. And we started looking at the monitors when it was daylight. Something weird is going on, but we see my provisioner Brahmin running around and settlers going for a stroll. Though you notice that line to the right? I'm not sure exactly what that is. It's on either side, to the left and the right. You see how that tree is slightly cut off to the left? Perhaps that's just part of the effect. We can switch cameras by pressing E, but this only switches between cameras at the same settlement. It's not going to allow you to switch from settlement to settlement. In order to do that, you have to back out by pressing R and then select a new settlement to then switch between the cameras only at that settlement. But upon arrival back at Somerville Place, I get a message, failed. Help defend Hangman's Alley. Hangman's Alley suffered damage from an attack. But that can't be right. I was only first notified that Hangman Alley was under attack while I was viewing the monitors. The game usually gives us hours to make our way to a settlement to aid in its defense. How exactly did I fail so quickly? And also notice that it's a completely different time of day. It's dusk. The sun is setting to the west, which is strange. Before we looked at the monitors, it was the middle of the day. When we looked through the camera at Somerville Place, it was the middle of the night, and now it's dusk. Alright, something's up. Opening my Pip-Boy here, and taking a look at the time. September 63rd? 2291? What? It's 5:50 p.m., clearly not the same time that it was when I looked at the terminals, but how is it the 63rd of September? Okay, I had to test this to see if it really was a problem with the monitors, so activating the security camera monitors again, we can again choose Somerville Place. Just like last time, it statics out, and will you look at that? It's early morning in Somerville Place. The sun is rising to the east. We see long shadows cast to the west. Yeah, it's not 5:50 at night anymore. Backing out, and then taking a look at the time. November 112th, 2291, at 9 in the morning. Remember how they said when selling the Creation Club to us that one of the benefits of the Creation Club is that every creation is going to go through a rigorous quality assurance process? Yeah, about that. Now, to prove that this is a problem with the creation and not some other mod conflict, I reloaded a previous save before I created the monitors. Here I am in the same settlement, and taking a look at the date, it's July 15th, 2291. Okay, so what are the ramifications of this in-game? Well, as you saw, we can fail defending settlements almost instantly without ever having an opportunity to travel to their defense. This could also be a problem from a role-playing perspective. What if you're role-playing a character who's only 37 years old, for example? If you use the monitors enough, you could inadvertently dramatically age your character. Plus, there's the fact that the dates don't make any sense. Each time we checked the date after using the monitor, we discovered that the month had more days than a month should. That clearly breaks the date and time system of the game. Now, I read from other players who were playing on survival mode that this can dramatically affect the survival mechanics of the game, because thirst and hunger are tied to the time of the game. Go too long without water and food, and your character suffers because of it. What if you peer into these monitors while thirsty, and then you back out and die? So this needs to be fixed. Additionally, after using it these 2 times, I wasn't able to do so again. And I honestly can't explain this because you saw it work a moment ago, but the 3rd time I tried to view the cameras, I got a message saying, you don't have security cameras installed in any of your settlements. But peering outside my settlement, you can see the security camera clearly installed, and it's wired. It's in the exact same place it was last time, but trying the monitors again, and we get the same error message. And it's not just me. I was reading the Bethesda forums about this creation, and I found other users complaining about this exact same issue. Now, it's not a common issue, very few people are complaining about it, but it does affect some. I think I might have an idea what's causing it. I used console commands to remove the build limit for every settlement that I have, but when I tried using this tool on a character that had not done that, I never had this issue. I was able to view the cameras from the monitors every time. So my best bet right now is that this works normally for normal settlements, but if you removed your settlement build limit, you may have some problems. To diagnose the date and time issue, I tried this on a number of characters, and I even uninstalled all of my mods and disabled all of my plugins, but the issue persisted, so I do think that this is a problem with the creation. The next item in the defense build menu is the Watchtower. This is great. I've been scratch building my own watchtowers, but it's nice to now have a pre-built one. The defense generated by the watchtower is much more than all other guard posts in the game, even the ones that come with Vault-Tec Workshop. They work exactly like the other guard towers. We simply assign a settler to the guard tower, and then eventually the settler will walk on over, climb the stairs, and take his or her post as a guard. I love it. That's it for the defense build menu. Backing out and moving one over, we find a furniture build menu. But sadly, there's only one item in this build menu. a shooting range. It's pretty big, but it produces happiness, which is great. I'm always looking for new ways to make my settlers happy. Now, at first I thought that settlers would interact with this thing, kind of like how they interact with chairs and bars and some of the other items that came with Vault-Tec Workshop. But after placing the shooting range and waiting and waiting and waiting, none of my settlers ever interacted with it. They never picked up a gun and began shooting at any of the targets. I then went to Sunshine Tidings Co-op, where I have a whole lot more room, and placed a bunch of these suckers. Here I have 36 settlers. I waited until the early morning, right after everyone woke up, but before they go to their shops to start the workday, and they all just walked on by. Some of them collided with them, some of them got stuck inside the fences, some of them just stopped in front of them, but none of them pulled out a gun and fired at any of the targets. So, from my experimentation, settlers don't interact with these things. I could be wrong about that, but I could never get them to do so in my game. And if that's the case, then what do you do with it? I mean, we could try and fire at the targets ourselves, and that's fun for a good 15 seconds. We can see the little round things spin. Okay, great. But then what? Well, then it generates happiness for the settlement. Okay, fine. It works as a settlement decoration that generates happiness, but it would be so much better if settlers could interact with it. Then we could use them, say, at the castle to set up a firing range for the Minutemen, or at the airport to set up a firing range for the Brotherhood of Steel, or at the Nuka World truck stop to set up a firing range as a carnival attraction, along with all of our other Nuka World attractions. If I'm right that settlers can't actually interact with this thing, then I see this as a huge missed opportunity, and I have to admit I'm pretty disappointed. I should note here that when reading the Bethesda forums, other players talked about this item as if settlers could come up and fire at them. So maybe it does work that way, and this is just a weird quirk of my particular game save. That's it for furniture, so backing out of furniture, we can move to the right to access the Walls build menu. And here we find a whole bunch of new junk walls. These are amazing. I've been looking for a tile set like this for quite some time. These walls are much taller than the junk walls that currently exist in the game, and they all snap together. However, the accessories that come with this tile set don't snap with existing junk walls, which is a little frustrating. This new tile set effectively makes the existing junk tile set obsolete. The tile set comes with two pieces. First is the angled piece, and this angled piece comes in three styles: the metal style, the plank style, and the plywood style. These angled pieces are designed to help make your wall curve around the settlement, or they could be used to make little towers like you see here. The next tile set is the junk wall mid, and like the angled piece, this also comes in three styles: metal, planks, and plywood. The mid pieces snap to each other and also snap to the angled pieces. The final part of the wall set are wall toppers. The wall toppers act as preventative measures to keep enemies from scaling the walls. We've got a barbed wire coil, a barbed wire post, barbed wire spikes, regular spikes without the barbed wire, and a barbed wire Y-frame. Since enemies can spawn in the middle of your settlement, depending on where the settlement spawn point is, these have no practical purpose. They just look nice, but that's okay. The same can be said for all the walls in the game. The final menu that comes with the Settlement Ambush Kit is the Decorations menu, which is last on the list. Here we find 4 new decorations: a Fat Man crate from Fort Strong, a mortar shell, an open Fat Man crate, and a sandbag wall. And that's everything that comes with this creation. So, is it worth $9? Well, this is frustrating, because there are some things we just don't know that only Bethesda knows. How much work did they have to put into it? How many resources did they have available? What is the price that they had to charge for it to make it worth their time to make? We don't know the answers to any of those questions. But as consumers, the best we can do is compare what we get to what we've gotten in the past. The entire Automatron DLC for Fallout 4 originally sold for $10 without the Season Pass. That's only $1 more than everything we just went over in the Settlement Ambush Kit. But with Automatron, we got new NPCs, a huge voiced quest, an entire robot building system for our workshop mode, new armor, new weapons. I mean, it was just so much larger than this. So from a straight apples to apples comparison, no, this is not by any stretch of the imagination worth it. But that's not the only way to look at it. We could look at it by what we want to get out of it. Let's say a player has spent countless hours building up all of his settlements, and yet his settlements never get attacked. He may feel like all of that time and energy was wasted. Then this creation comes along, and it's exactly what he's always wanted. This ambush kit finally gives settlement defense a purpose. The tiered waves and the flag rewards gives me a reason to build walls, build turrets, and it makes settlement defense so much more fun. It makes me want to sit here and fight all of these waves over and over and over again just to earn all of the flags to see how many I could possibly earn. It's a brilliant idea, and it has the potential to give a player hours and hours of enjoyment. For that player, it may be worth $9. That said, most of what we find in this creation already existed as mods. For example, the settlement management software has an option to generate attacks at all of the spawn points within each settlement. I've been using the settlement management software for years while building my settlements. It's that tool that I use to mark the settlement spawn points at each of my settlements, and that tool allows us to generate enemy attacks. Now, we can't choose what enemies attack us, and with this creation we kind of can. We can choose between intelligent humanoids like raiders and gunners and monsters and super mutants who are attracted to different things. But still, this function sort of already existed. The decorations that come with this creation are also really disappointing. We've had this forever. We've been able to place down mortars and Fat Man crates and sandbag barricades with a variety of mods, including OC Decorator and Warehouse Shelves by Cartman 1975. Aside from the flag rewards and the unique way of going about settlement raids, for me there were only two parts of this creation that felt new. The first was the new junk walls. These are superior junk walls to the one we get in the game. These ones actually snap together, whereas the vanilla ones didn't. And I can already foresee that I'm going to be having a lot of fun working with these in the future. The second is the entire idea of the security camera, and I do use the word idea because the reality is disappointing. The idea is great. If this worked the way it was intended to work, I would be completely blown away. Cameras at each of my settlements and the ability to monitor what's going on from my home settlement, that's fantastic. I wonder, though, how it works during an attack. The way attacks in the game work is if you get a message that your settlement is under attack, you have a choice. Do you show up or not? If you do show up, then your settlement likely survives the attack with minimal damage, because you're there and it's either you die or the settlement survives. If you choose not to show up, then the game rolls some dice. And even if you have 100 happiness and tons of defense, there's still a chance that your settlement will lose the fight and be damaged during the attack. So my big question is, if we get a message that our settlement is under attack, but in lieu of physically going there, we head to the monitors to watch what's going on, does that count from a gameplay perspective as being there in person? After all, if we're watching the battle unfold, and if our defenses are enough to defend the settlement, we can watch all of the super mutants die, and then it should survive, right? I wasn't able to discover the answer because of the creation's issues. It completely messes up time in the game, so even if I get a settlement attack and then race to my monitors to watch it in real time, by the time I get there the attack is over, because the creation adds 20 to 30 days to the month that I'm in. Another drawback to using the monitors is we can only view one settlement's cameras at a time. Instead of being able to cycle through all of the cameras in our system, we have to choose a settlement. And if we want to see cameras in another settlement, we have to back out of the one we're in and then move into the next one. And each time we do so, we have to load into that settlement, which makes me wonder why we just don't fast travel there to begin with. So the idea is wonderful, and I really wish it worked. But sadly, the execution is extremely disappointing. Next is the Fantasy Hero set. Move over, Gragnak. There's a new hero in town. Embark on a quest to retrieve the helmet and sword of a true warrior of legend and cleave a path of victory through the entire Commonwealth. Creation obtained through quest. The Fantasy Hero set is selling for 300 credits. That's $3. Is it worth it? Let's find out. The next time we arrive in the Commonwealth, we get the quest Method to the Madness. Investigate Hubris Comics. Again. How many times are these Creation Club creations gonna send us to Hubris Comics? I only mention it because eventually Hubris Comics is gonna run out of room. We come here to get the comic t-shirts, we come here for Captain Cosmos, and now we come here for the fantasy set. Pretty soon there's not gonna be any room for the ghouls. Well, heading to Hubris Comics, we can pass the Captain Cosmos kiosk and head inside. We then have to fight through all the ghouls of Hubris Comics. We only find what we are looking for on the top floor. Once we reach the top floor, we find a new holotape on the table labeled The Director's Notes. Inside, we find 5 entries. The first on September 24th, 2077. Dave's been spending a ton of time over at Shenley's lately. We can all smell the alcohol on him, but he's adamant he's doing research. He calls the place his personal castle and said the metal statues remind him of the golems in the script. At first I was okay with it. I mean, the battle mage he is playing does live in a castle, and it does have golems guarding the entrance. If that's what it takes to get a good performance out of him, so be it. Still, the other day I had Bob follow him, and it turns out he spends half the time at the bar and the other half in the bathroom. But knowing Dave, he's gonna tell me that it's his doggone throne. In the next one, October 6, 2077, Dave's getting obsessed with his role. He comes to the set in full armor and demands we address him by his character's name. I tried having his agent call him, only to find out he's cut off the electricity in his home. And I'm not sure what that was he had for lunch, but Bob swears it was still moving. Next casting call, I'm gonna tell Jenny no more method actors. In the next one, on the 19th. Can someone please hide the new sword and helmet before the next shoot? I've told Dave time and time again that we'll live with his bullcrap so long as he doesn't endanger the crew. The fact that he brought a real sword on set is pretty much the opposite of what I asked for. He nearly sliced off Bob's ear whipping that thing around, and I'm afraid if he kills him, the insurance isn't going to cover it. On top of that, all the screaming he does in that fake language is starting to grate on everyone. Could he be screaming, "Foo's Roda"? I warned him, one more stunt like this and I'm gonna write his character off with the most excruciating death imaginable. Let's see him method act that. In the next one, on the 22nd, when Dave found out about the script changes, he just about lost it. He kept saying this nonsense about his new levitation spell and went out to the roof to prove he could fly. They're trying to talk him off the ledge right now, but I feel like most of us would be okay with it if he went ahead and jumped. The problem is he's wearing valuable set property, so we can't let that get damaged. I told Bob to go after him and secure the props before telling Dave he's fired. And in the final one day later, somehow Dave made it to the other ledge. He jumped onto one of his so-called golems and climbed up. They said Bob went after him but didn't make it across. Now we're missing 2 actors and a whole bunch of props. I don't know how I'm going to explain this to the suits. No one knows where Dave went, but I'd be willing to bet he's still holed up in his imaginary castle. Well, it sounds like this drama took place on the roof. Heading to the ladder, we can climb to the roof of Hubris Comics. But when we arrive...
Where are they?
Doggone jump scares. Peering over the ledge to the west, we see a skeleton lying on a crate. It looks like a short jump down, so hopping down we can walk over. And beneath the skeleton, next to an ashtray and spent cigarettes, we find a handwritten note. Jenny's diary. How on earth did Dave make that jump? Bob didn't even make it to the statue, and he used to be a long jumper in high school. I've stacked the boxes as high as I could, and it still seems impossible. My latest theory is that he jumped off the streetlight. We just didn't see it from where we were standing. But some of the staff is starting to wonder if he really is a battle mage. That's obviously bullcrap, and I refuse to believe it on general principle. Besides, if Dave really did know how to levitate, he wouldn't have needed that ladder to climb to the other edge. Not sure what he was doing over there, but he shouted some nonsense about conjuring a key. I can't be sure, but I think I saw him fish something out of a duffel bag. We see that Jenny has stacked up some crates for us over here. There's that golem over there, and the ledge that Dave must have leapt to. Peering over the ledge, oh, look at that. There's Bob. Despite being a jumper, he didn't make it very far. Looking back across, there's the marker. So that's where we need to get. Well, all right. Shall we jump for it? What is this, leap of faith? An Indiana Jones sort of thing?
Yeah.
Nope. No, let's try that again. The message did say that she thought we should use the light post. Jumping down onto this vent, we can creep across the light post and then jump to the other side. Oh, almost. Oh. Well, there's nothing for it. The only way is to fight our way through. Heading forward, we arrive at Shenley's Oyster Bar, which I covered in my video on unmarked locations that you can watch here. After the raiders are dead, we can head into the kitchen. Now, the holotape did mention something about how Dave liked to use the bathroom, and the bathroom door is closed. But this didn't used to be closed before we installed the creation. Now it requires a key. Well, perhaps that's what Dave was putting into the duffel bag. Well, since we couldn't jump across and we weren't wearing power armor with a jetpack, we have to enter the oyster bar, climb to the top, out the top door, and clear the raiders on the roof. When the raiders are dead, we can climb the stairs to the top, and then climb a bunch of boxes stacked on top of each other to reach the platform. Sure enough, we find a duffel bag, and inside, the throne room key. We also find notes on the throne room. I hast hidden the spare key to my throne room high atop the castle ramparts, where nary a soul can findeth it, not even the valorous Sir Shenley. It is vital that I not be disturbed when I am alone in my chambers. Emptying my body and mind allows me to focus and replenish my magic reserves. But if meditation faileth, I keep several potions from the Archmage Gwynnet nearby. It is unfortunate that so many peasants seek to enter my private sanctuary. But as I told the others, if nature beckons, there are plenty of castles across the road where thou can relieve thyself. Still, if these rogues manage to break through the chamber's seal, they will meet a swift end by the edge of my sword, Hubris Bane. Oh, they didn't really, they did, really, didn't they? Well, with the spare key in hand, we can hop down from the roof and open the door to the bathroom. With that, we complete the quest Method to the Madness, and here we find the remains of Dave. He is, as he said he was, surrounded by empty Gwynnet bottles, and he's buried in garbage and filth. His sword is even stabbed into it. Was the Shenley Oyster Bar bathroom that filthy before the war? He's wearing a unique helmet. It's a legendary item called the Iron Helm. It has 22 damage resistance, 2 energy resistance, and grants us +1 to strength and endurance. And, of course, this is the helmet from Skyrim. It's the iconic helmet of the game. It's even called the Iron Helmet in the game. With 22 ballistic resistance and 2 energy resistance, that makes it by far the best helmet in the entire game for ballistic damage. The Disciple's helmet, for example, only has 14 damage resistance, though it does have 16 energy resistance. The Marine helmet is more balanced, with 19 ballistic resistance and 19 energy resistance. So the Iron Helmet falls short on energy resistance, but it outshines every other helmet with ballistic resistance. Couple that with the strength and endurance bonuses, and that just makes this an amazing piece of armor. The Iron Helmet has 2 upgrades. We can reinforce it, which adds +5 to damage resistance and adds +1 to strength, but it doesn't appear to change the look of the helmet. There's also the lead-lined upgrade, which brings damage resistance back down to 22, but adds +15 radiation resistance. This likewise does not appear to change the helmet visually. Stabbed into the garbage is his legendary weapon, the Steel Sword. It has a base damage of 63, and the legendary effect increases damage after each consecutive hit on the same target. This is also straight from Skyrim. It has the exact same appearance as Skyrim's Steel Sword. With 63 damage, the Steel Sword now carries the distinction of having the greatest base damage of any medium-speed melee weapon in the entire game. For perspective, Grognak's Axe is also a medium-speed weapon, but only does 25 damage. General Chow's Revenge is medium and does 28 damage. Kremv's Tooth is medium and only does 28 damage with a poison effect. This thing does more damage than most slow weapons. In fact, There are only 2 melee weapons that do more damage than this steel sword. The first is Sito's Shiny Slugger from Nuka World, which does 123 damage. And the second is Adam's Judgment from Far Harbor, which does 140 damage, but 100 of that damage is pure radiation damage, making Adam's Judgment less viable on ghouls and other radiation-resistant enemies. The sword has 3 possible upgrades. The Sharp upgrade, which adds bleeding damage and increases the melee damage from 63 to 93. Holy cow. Then there's the Electrified Blade, which keeps damage the same but adds 34 electrical damage. And then there's the Nuclear Blade, which again keeps 63 damage but adds 52 radiation damage, turning it into a devastating weapon against humans. The Nuclear Blade throbs a greenish color. The electrical blade has some sort of red power thing on it and is wrapped in a copper coil. It crackles with blue electricity. I didn't see any visual difference with the sword after sharpening it. The sword appears to be a one-of-a-kind item, with many of the other Creation Club weapons, including the anti-material rifle, the handmade shotgun, even the solar cannon. We can find alternate versions at some of the other merchants. But I checked with Arturo and the other merchants at Diamond City, as well as Daisy and Cleo and Goodneighbor, and they didn't have any other versions of the iron sword. So is it worth $3? Well, for a melee character, yeah, I mean, the sword is just phenomenal. It's one of the best melee weapons in the entire game. And the helmet is great. The best ballistic damage resistance in the entire game for any helmet ever, even if it comes at the expense of energy resistance. I worry about balance. These items are better than much of what we find in the vanilla game. If every Creation Club creation is far and away better than what we find in the game, then I worry about game balance. Part of the fun of finding a new weapon is getting used to its unique quirks, doing something new with it, not defeating every single enemy really easily. Plus, if this is one of the best melee weapons in the game, well then what happens the next time the Creation Club wants to release a new melee weapon? Well, now they're gonna have to make it better than the Iron Sword, and then the next time they'll have to make it better than the last one, and so on and so forth. That said, I'm also really glad that the Fantasy Hero set is viable. Nothing is more disappointing than to buy a new piece of armor and weaponry, only to discover that it's not as good as what you already have in the game. So I understand that this is a fine line to walk. Do we give them something epic and amazing that may break the balance of the game? Or do we give them something a little bit more realistic, but may not be quite as good as what they already have? Tough call. Now, both of these items come straight from Skyrim, and you know how I feel about video game crossovers. I'm not a fan. That said, I do think this implementation was better than what they did with the Doom set. The Doom set, I think, is a great example of how not to do a game crossover. There was practically no quest involved, and it was called Doom Armor. There was no attempt to make the Doom armor fit into the world. With this Skyrim armor, at least they attempted to make it fit into the world. We discovered that they are fantasy props for a Hubris Comics film set, which makes sense in the world. It's realistic, it's practical. And it's not called the Skyrim set. It's called the Fantasy Hero set. The items are called the Iron Helmet and the Iron Sword. If we had absolutely no knowledge of Skyrim, we wouldn't think that this was another game crossover. We would just think that it's a great looking piece of fantasy-inspired armor that could fit in the world. So as far as crossovers go, I think this was implemented pretty well. That said, if I wanted to play Skyrim, I'd play Skyrim. In terms of my everyday gameplay, it's not something that I'm really attracted to. Now, the story that they created was funny and short. I don't know if I would really call it a quest. It's not much of a quest. I have to admit, though, that I did laugh while reading the story. I thought it was pretty funny, though the story did become a bit ridiculous when we got to the roof. The amazing powers that Dave exhibited, being able to jump over the road onto the other rooftop, was never explained. There's no great leaping or levitation ability that comes as a legendary effect with these armor pieces. How did he make the jump? Is he really a magical fantasy hero? Or was it just a burst of beer-fueled adrenaline? I don't know. And the idea that Bob would follow him is ridiculous. No one would leap to their death trying to chase after a coworker, especially a coworker who was as despised as Dave. Also, the dates don't really make sense. We're supposed to believe that Dave fled to the roof when he learned that he was being written out of the show on October 22nd, but it wasn't until the next day on October 23rd that Dave leapt across the road to the other ledge. So are we to believe that he spent the night on the roof? Also, the final date in the holotape is October 23rd, 2077, which is the day the bombs dropped, which means that the author of this note would have had to have written his note before 9:47 in the morning, Saturday morning. Did he come to work on Saturday morning? What was he doing at work Saturday morning? Why was Bob, his coworker, at work Saturday morning? Why did Bob wake up early Saturday morning and instead of enjoy his day off, go to work at Hubris Comics and risk his life trying to rescue Dave who leapt across? The Great War explains why we find Jenny's corpse on the roof. She must have died in the initial blast that hit outside of Boston while observing the corpse of Bob in the middle of the road. And instead of calling an ambulance, she sat there pondering how Dave could have possibly gotten across. Maybe he used a lamppost. She was so unmoved by the death of Bob that she lit up a few cigarettes, which we still see in the ashtray right next to the diary note that she took the time to sit and write. Can you imagine? She's sitting on the roof of her place of business early in the morning on a Saturday. Her coworker just leapt to his death. Her other coworker leapt across the road and is on another roof. And she sits down, pulls out a notebook, lights a cigarette, and starts writing a diary entry. I mean, it's a little silly. Anyway, I'm still really glad that they attempted to make the helmet and the sword fit into the world. So, much appreciated. If I was playing a heavily armored melee character, I think this would definitely be worth it to me. But I'm not going to be using it on my melee character because she's a stealthy assassin, I need a faster weapon, and the helmet probably wouldn't look good on her. And that about does it. That's every new item with the latest update to the Creation Club. So unless they decide to release a whole bunch of weapon and power armor skins tomorrow or something, we'll be back to the full story of Fallout 1 tomorrow morning. What are your thoughts on the latest Creation Club creations? Did you experience the same bugs that I did in the Settlement Ambush Kit? Bethesda's pretty good about patching these things. They already released updates that fixed the sight on the triple barrel shotgun, for example. So I'm sure that if the date and time issue on the Settlement Ambush Kit is experienced by everyone, that they'll roll out an update to fix it soon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish many Fallout videos each and every week here on my channel, so if you want to make sure you don't miss my next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I have a shirt shop with completely unique designs that you can't find anywhere else. My designs come in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. They also come on other products as well, smartphone cases, mugs, pillows, posters, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early with the continuation of our series on the full story of Fallout 1.